We seem to be obsessed with morning routines, and I do admit I have, tried a few over the years, but let me share you the one that I probably enjoy the most out of all of them, and that is, no surprises, painting and sketching pretty much straight after I wake up. I've been doing this a few days a week for a number of years now, and it's really helped me with my art practice. And that's for a number of reasons. First of all, I wake up feeling quite calm and positive, and turning this into creative energy and into something that I enjoy doing. It's just awesome. It sets me up for the day. And second, it's quite easy to come into my studio and just pick up where I left off the night before. There's no big setup time because I'm pretty bad at tidying up. Lastly, it really forces me to paint fast because I only have about 15 to 20 minutes. So being quite free and loose in my approach in those morning sketches and studies. If you would like to see me paint one of those quick studies that I do in the morning, then hang around. As a reference, I'm using one of my own photos, which I took over in the Netherlands, and I tell you a little bit more about this particular location later on. I start with a really quick sketch, even quicker and looser than I already sketch, because my paintings aren't very complicated. They're very simple landscapes in general, so sketching never takes up a lot of time or is particularly difficult for me to do. And then I'm going to kick off with some buff titanium, which is a wonderful creamy color. I recommend having that in your palette because it's just good to thicken up some light colors to give them a bit more body without using white opaque gouache or anything. And I'm just going to block out my two cloud shapes. One of the objectives for this sketch, apart from it being really fast and loose, is to play with white space. In this sketch, I want to experiment with leaving the top left and the bottom right areas white, and thus creating a negative shape around the main parts of the painting. I dropped in cerulean with a little bit of ultramarine blue for the sky, and I'm quite punchy here, so there's a lot of pigment. I once read somewhere that when you sketch, you should always use a lot of pigment in your sketches. That's the time to experiment with color and techniques that you might be too cautious to do in real painting, in inverted commas. I used some raw sienna with whatever's on my palette from the Sky Mix to block in that middle ground, that greenish kind of color there. And now I'm gonna add a bit of a cloud shadow with some of that cerulean blue as well, and the raw sienna mix that makes quite a nice warm grey. There we go, and that's all I'm going to do for the sky for now. I'm going to add some quinacridone gold, a little bit of burnt sienna. If you've seen my videos before, you are probably familiar with my palette. It's very straightforward. I have pretty much base colors in there, nothing too fancy. I can mix anything that I want. It gives me a nice, natural, muted color palette. Putting in some dry brushing there. I want to leave out the grass that's coming in from the bottom up. So I'm doing sort of the reverse grass painting. And you might have noticed I'm using a natural hair calligraphy brush because it doesn't give me a huge amount of control, but it still lets me paint broad and fine, and I can create textures such as grass quite easily with the one brush. I haven't used this brush for a while, so sketching quick and freely like this is another opportunity to maybe pick up a brush or a tool that you haven't used in a while to get familiar with it again. Okay, I put the background trees in just with a darker version of the green, and you can see the sky was still a tiny bit wet, so I've got some lovely soft edges and hard edges mixed in, and I want to keep the focal point on the tower so that the left side of the painting has gone a bit fuzzy is perfect, because soft edges won't attract our attention, the hard edges do. Put in a bit of dark at the bank of my water, And then use that same color to place a few bushes around the banks there as well, and that will help separate the background from the middle ground. A little bit more strength onto that bank. I've mixed quite a strong dark brown for my tower. And I'm going to admit I always struggle a bit with buildings, whether they're modern or ancient, whether they're small or large. You'd think painting a straight line or a rectangle should be the easiest thing, but funnily enough, it's very easy to make them look wonky or out of perspective. So I am not very confident in urban scenes and streetscapes. That is something I'm working on and learning, but explains why you see mostly landscapes on my channel and other socials. And it doesn't help that this is a clumsy looking tower, and it's actually called the Clumsy Tower. So not my fault that it looks the way it looks, more like a wine bottle than a tower, but here we are. You can see me here taking a lot more care with that one little element in the painting than anything else. Arguably it is the focal point, so gotta get it kind of right. Good enough. And now I'm just going to dry brush in some red grass to connect the tower to that foreground. And the splatters help to make a bit of a softer transition from the white into the painted areas. So a bit of texture to slowly ease us up into the painting. Taking shape now, you can see, the juxtaposed white spaces there, top left, bottom right, framing the rest of the painting. I think that middle needs a bit more value, because once the tower is in, that's kind of the darkest value of the painting. So I just need to match what's around it. It also creates a bit of a leading line leading up to the tower. And I've now got a number of compositional devices to help me guide the viewer to the focal point. For starters, it's the only vertical in a horizontally dominated painting, but with the detail at the base of it with the red grass, and the fact that it's red grass really attracts our attention. And now I've also added a connecting line from the left into the tower. A few final touches, darker edge on the tower to indicate a bit of light, and then I also wanted to get a bit of a cloud reflection in my water, so I'm going to darken the left and right. I promised you the story of the tower. It's located on the west coast of the Netherlands on one of the islands, and it's the last building remaining from a number of villages that were there but sunk into the ocean in the Middle Ages, 1500 something, when the water encroached onto the land. The plight of the Dutch. I've been cycling past this tower since I was a young boy, so this location is dear to my heart, and about time that I have honoured it with a painting, or at least a sketch. I hope you enjoyed this. See you next time.